Getting the hardest math questions right on the digital SAT doesn't take a math genius. I'm going to show you how you can get them right with ease with just a basic foundation level of math. The math questions on the SAT, they're just super tricky. If you think of it, it's like an escape room where it's not intuitively obvious how to escape the room, so you have to look for clues. So the objective of getting these hard questions right is to write down what you know. Take it methodically, take it slow and steady. I'm going to explain to you and I'm going to show you exactly how that's done. So let's take a look at this question right here, question number 27. The perimeter of an equilateral triangle is 624 centimeters. So what you do right away, without even finishing the question, is you always ask yourself, what do I know? Write down what you know, and let's take it slow and steady and let's look for clues. Well, right away, you know what an equilateral triangle is, right? An equilateral triangle is a triangle where all the sides are equal. So what do I know? I know that all the sides are equal. What else do I know? Well, I know an equilateral triangle, all the angles are 60 degrees. Okay. So we're gonna write that down because that's what we know. The other thing is they say the perimeter of an equilateral triangle is 624 centimeters. Okay, so if all the sides are the same, let's say all the sides are x, so I know that x plus x plus x equals 624. So I know that 3x equals 624. Or now I know x is equal to 208. So 624 divided by 3, x is equal to 208. So now I know that each side is 208. Look how much information I got just from the first sentence. A lot of students, what they like to do is they read the question and they don't really know what to do because there's no easy way to go from the question directly to the answer. You got to go through these steps first. So the way to do it is always ask yourself, what do I know? Write down what you know, even if you don't even believe that that has anything to do with answering the question. Let's write down what you know, because what you're going to find is that's going to be an easy stepping stone to getting the right answer. You don't need to be a math genius, and I don't like doing a lot of complicated math work. I try and make it easy on myself and try to make it easy on my students as well. And that's how we're able to get perfect scores. And I want you to get the same. So in this case, we know right now that all the sides are 208. So the first sentence, we got a lot of information from the first sentence. Okay, let's go to the second sentence. The height of this triangle is k squared of 3 centimeters. So the height of a triangle. Okay, so let's actually draw the height of this triangle. So that's right here. What does that mean when I draw the height? Well, I know that this is going to be 90 degrees. I know if I'm drawing the height, then this 60 degrees gets cut into 30 degrees. So now I have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, and the height is k squared of 3. I also know this length right here. The whole thing was 208. So if I divide it into 2, this is 104. So I know this is 104, this is 208, and I know the hypotenuse, the other leg of the triangle is k squared of 3. Okay, so you could use a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared in order to figure out what k squared of 3 is, or you can use the trick that I like to do is you have to memorize that a 30, 60, 90 triangle is always going to be in the form opposite 30 is going to be x, opposite 60 is going to be x squared of 3, and opposite 90 is going to be 2x. So opposite the 30 is going to be x, so in that case that's 104. Opposite the 60 is x squared of 3, so that's going to be k squared of 3. So we expect it to be 104 squared of 3. So in this case, k is going to be equal to 104. There you go. A seemingly hard problem that most students would get wrong. You tackled it with relative ease with just knowing basic math. And that's how it is on the SAT. It's more about trying to trick you than actually making the math complicated. Let's work on another question here, number 26. 1 gallon of paint will cover 220 square feet of surface. A room has a total wall area of W square feet. Which equation represents the total amount of paint P in gallons needed to paint the walls of the room twice? There's a lot of information there, right? A lot of people are going to think of generating an equation and try and figure it out that way. But remember, we want to make it easy on ourselves. If we're doing too much work, if we're thinking too much, we're going down the wrong path. So let's try and make it as easy on ourselves as possible. Ask ourselves, what do we know? So what do we know? 1 gallon of paint will cover 220 square feet of surface. So 1 gallon of paint, 1 gallon of paint is going to cover 220 square feet. Great. A room has a total wall of W square feet. Which equation represents the total amount of paint P needed to paint the walls of the room twice? Now, there's a lot of variables here, and I don't want to make it complicated on myself, so let's make it easy on myself. Let's just create a little bit of a table, and let's try and figure this out for ourselves. So we have W and we have P. So W is the square feet of the wall. So let's say W is 220, because that's an easy number to think about. What would P be? So 1 gallon of paint covers 220 square feet, and P is the amount of paint needed to paint the walls of the room twice. So you you would need 1 gallon for 220 square feet. So to paint it twice, you would need two. So if W is 220, P is 2. We sort of made it now a little bit simpler. Now it sort of makes sense. If W is 220, then to paint the walls twice, you need 2 gallons. So if W is 220, P is 2. So now you can go back to the answer choices and say, if W is 220, which one will give me P of 2? Well, if W is 220, C will give you just 1. D, 220 times 220 will definitely not give you 2. Same with B. 220 divided by 110, that's going to give you 2. That's the only thing that works. You can see how we take a problem that most students will get wrong and transform it into a question that's actually pretty simple to do. All right, let's move on. Let's work on the next question. So number 25. An isosceles right triangle has a perimeter of 94 plus 94 squared of 2 inches. All right, so what do? First thing we do is ask ourselves, what do we know? Isosceles right triangle. So let's draw a right triangle. Right triangle. Isosceles means two sides are the same. So that also means the two angles are the same. So it's a 45, 45, 90 triangle. And it has a perimeter of 94 plus 94 squared of 2 inches. Well, what's the perimeter of an isosceles right triangle? Well, opposite to 45 is x, opposite to 45 is x, and the hypotenuse is going to be x squared of 2. You had to memorize that, or you can do a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. That's okay too. Or just memorize that a 30, 60, 90 and a 45, 45, 90. That should be in your toolbox that you have to memorize. That a 45, 45, 90 is always going to be in the relationship x, x, x squared of 2. So now the perimeter is 94 plus 94 squared of 2. So what's the perimeter? X plus x plus x squared of 2 is equal to 94 plus 94 squared of 2. So now they're asking, what is the length of one leg of the triangle? Well, one leg is just x, so we're just looking for x. So how do we get x? Well, a lot of students would just say, oh, x squared of 2, 94 squared of 2. So they'll just pick 94. Or they'll see this x plus x, and they'll be like, oh, okay, x plus x and 94, and they're going to pick 47 because 94 divided by 2 is 47. And they'll both be wrong because they're trying to trick you here. Just look at the answer choices and just plug it into the answer choices. So if x is 47 squared of 2, will that match? So let's do that. 47 squared of 2 plus 47 squared of 2 plus 47 squared of 2 times squared of 2. What is that going to give me? These two will give me 94 squared of 2. And then square root of 2 times square root of 2 is just 2. So 47 times 2 is just 94. So that gives me 94 plus 94 square root of 2. So that's the answer, actually. It's 47 square root of 2. And you can see how it works out. Because you plug it in for x, that matches the right side. I mean, you could try and do something complicated by trying to solve for x. I don't even want to think through that because that seems pretty complicated. I don't even want to do things. I want to do things that are simple. Simple, simple, simple. If it's too complicated, don't do it. So you can see how you can actually solve these equations pretty simply. All right, let's move on to the next problem. And let's do number 26. So number 26 is an interesting problem. A lot of our students have difficulty with it. They don't even know where to start. They're like, this is very complicated. But now let's use what we talked about in order to make this problem simple by always asking ourselves, what do we know? Right? Let's do this. In the given pair of equations, A and B are constants. Okay, so A and B are just numbers. We don't know what they are, they're numbers. The graph of this pair of equations is a pair of perpendicular lines. Okay, so these two are perpendicular lines. So you need to know that parallel lines will have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, the slope will be negative reciprocal. That's something you need to know. Now, for these lines, and I have a separate video that goes through all that, but for these lines, do they look like lines? Well, right away you can tell me they don't look like lines at all. Why? Because we're always used to lines being y equals mx plus b. So why don't we just make it y equals mx plus b? So let's convert that. So you have 5x plus 7y is equal to 1. If I subtract the 5x, I get 7y is equal to negative 5x plus 1. Divide by 7, I get y is equal to negative 5 over 7x plus 1 over 7. Now, this looks to me like a line where the slope is negative 5 over 7 and the y-intercept is just 1 over 7. Great. Let's do the next line. ax plus by is equal to 1. What can I do? Well, I could subtract the ax, so I have by is equal to negative ax plus 1. Divide by b, y is equal to negative a over bx plus 1 over b. All right, so now I have two lines. These are the two lines, and they say that it is perpendicular. Well, if it's perpendicular, then I know the slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. So if the first slope is negative 5 over 7, I would expect this slope to be 7 over 5 because it would be negative reciprocal, so 7 over 5. So I know that negative a over b is equal to 7 over 5. Or you can say a over b is negative 7 over 5. But I know that right now. So now let's move on, right? So we got that information just from the first line. A lot of students, they read the first line and they just gloss over it and they read the question and then they don't even know what to do. So we have to always tackle it one step at a time. So now they're asking which of the following pairs of equations also represent a pair of perpendicular lines. So now let's do the same thing with the answer choices, right? Which one represents a pair of perpendicular lines? So let's put it in y equals mx plus b. Let's get the slope and let's see which ones are negative reciprocals of each other. So for the first one, let's subtract the 10x. So we have 7y is equal to negative 10x plus 1, and you have y is equal to negative 10 over 7x plus 1 over 7. Okay, that's one equation. Now let's get the second equation, which is the negative 2by is equal to negative ax plus 1. Divide by negative 2b. Y is equal to a over 2bx minus 1 over 2b. Okay, so the slope of the top one is negative 10 over 7. That means I would expect this bottom slope to be 7 over 10. What is a over 2b? Well, I know that a over b is negative 7 over 5. So a over 2b is negative 7 over 10. So a over 2b is going to be negative 7 over 10. So they're not the same. So they're not going to be perpendicular to each other. Let's try b. For b, we have 2by is equal to negative ax plus 1. Y is equal to negative a over 2b plus 1 over 2b. Notice the top equation here, 10x plus 7y is equal to 1. It's the same one. So we already found the slope should be 7 over 10, right? The slope here is negative 10 over 7. This slope should be 7 over 10. So negative a over 2b is negative a over b is 7 over 5. So negative a over 2b is 7 over 10. There you go. So we just found the pair of perpendicular lines, and Perfect. And that's the answer, and we can move on, knowing full well that 99% of the other students taking this exam is going to get this question wrong. And you just got it right with just a basic level of math. And that's the way to tackle every single question on the SAT math, regardless of how hard it is. Really do appreciate all your support. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.